Hello and welcome to the ROKER RAPPORT podcast in association with Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. My name's Rich Spate and I'm joined on this week's pod by Martin Wanless from Australia. How are you this morning, Martin?
I'm very well, Rich. I think I'm better than you and Bomber seemed in the aftermath of the game yesterday, but no, I'm alright.
Yeah, I've chilled out a bit now, I think, although the coffee I've had this morning is kicking in. So we'll see how we go. And we're also joined this morning from the northeast by Craig Chapman. How are you this morning, Craig?
Yeah, all good, thanks. Thankfully, I've managed to put behind yesterday's result and miserable podcast that you both recorded, so all good here.
Yeah, well, I was full of effing and jeffing and a little bit peed off on the post-match pod with Bomber, like Martin said, but I think we've all had a little bit of time to reflect. I think we've also seen the penalty incident from a slightly different angle from behind the goal, but let's quickly run through what happened yesterday. So we were away at Fleetwood Town, got off to it was a bit of a shaky start. We were all right, and then they had a chance on 16. That seemed to kick us into gear. It was a good bit of goalkeeping by Torben Hoffman, and then we went up the other end, won a free kick on the edge of the box where Winchester was fouled, and Hamilton put in a beautiful ball for Ross Stewart to head home and make it 1-0. We then kind of dominated the first half. They looked pretty much terrified with our forward play, especially in the middle of that half. And to be frank, we were in control first half, weren't we, Martin? It was a great performance for that 45.
I thought we did really well to start off with, and obviously even before Stewart got his goal, he had another header, didn't he, earlier on, that he headed straight at the keeper where he should really have scored.
Mm-hmm.
And, it sounds ridiculous when we know how the match turned out, but in parts of the first half, I thought we looked like a team going to a lower division team in a cup tie. I thought we looked a step up from what they were. And, of course, we know how it all transpired. But that first half, I thought we played some really nice football. And I think I made a comment at half time. I think we were just lacking a little bit of quality or a little bit of ruthlessness in the final third that really could have put the game to bed. And I think that's been it's been a factor in a lot of games so far this season. And this is one where we've got a little bit caught out by it.
Yeah, how did you see that first half then, Craig? Were you as impressed with it as Martin and I?
Yeah, certainly. I think, even though we were somewhat dominant, Fleetwood, to be fair, they did create a couple of chances of their own, and obviously the plaudits are rightfully with Torben Hoffman because he made some incredible saves, made a vital block in that first half, but it really did seem like it was just going to be another routine Saturday afternoon. I know we give them a bit of an early scare with Lyndon Gooch putting that ball in for Stewart, and although he was denied there, he took the next one absolutely superbly well. Maybe perhaps it was a bit of a generous free kick, but look, you've still got to do the rest. It was a great ball in from Elliot Embleton, and I think at that point, like Martin said, there was a bit of a gulf in class. Even though they did have the few chances there, it really did seem that it was going to be another 3 points on the board for us. But, we'll get into it, obviously, a little later on. But I think there has to be another degree of frustration, really, that we've had so many chances in front of goal and we have been quite wasteful again.
Definitely. Well, half-time came and they made a substitution at half-time, which, to be fair to Grayson, probably had a big part in the change in the game overall. They took a defender off and they put an attacker on, and it got quite scrappy to begin with in the second half, and then there was one big chance where Geeds dribbled into the box, and it was an amazing save from Cairns diving up to his right, which probably was one of the decisive moments in the game, really, looking back on it. Fleetwood then kind of came back into it. We had that one where Winchester was slightly out of position and got back for the goal-saving tackle with a recovery tackle. And then there was a switch. Dan Neil came off and Corey Evans came on. Now, I saw it at the time, Martin, as Johnson kind of trying to get control of the game again and solidify things. Do you think that had an overall effect on the way that we played, though?
No, I don't. I think when that time was approaching, I was kind of thinking we needed to take Dan Neil off at that point. I thought it was a really difficult game for him to get into. Mm-hmm. And he showed flashes of stuff in the first half, but he actually gave the ball away quite a lot. And I think he was giving the ball away by virtue of the fact he was looking for a good pass. And, it's dead easy for midfielders to to have a very high pass percentage, isn't it, when they just play safe passes? And Dan Neil's game's all about not playing those safe passes and trying to create something. But it just wasn't quite happening for him against Fleetwood. And on the commentary, Frankie and Danny were saying maybe Luke O'Nien would be coming off because of his yellow card, because he'd done the Chilean, as they say, hadn't he? But,
pulled him back.
Now I was thinking like Dan Neil's got to be the one to make way. So I wasn't surprised at all to see Corey Evans come on, because obviously you get the added benefit of Evans' experience and know-how. And to me, it seemed like a really sensible sub. So I don't really think that altered how we played. I think it was more to do with the fact that we gave away a stupid goal shortly after we got the second that really put the pressure on us.
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, there was another substitution where Embleton was replaced by Nathan Broadhead. And then, yeah, we got a deserved penalty. There's no controversy around our penalty, is there, Craig? It was a clear pull back at the back post against Luke O'Nien. Was being pulled back when he had a good chance to score. There was a little bit of confusion about exactly what foul he'd given, but there was definitely a foul in the box there. And Gede slotted away the pen. Were you really confident at that point, Craig, that we were just going to waltz home with the result?
Yeah, I think with just over 10 minutes to go, when you're 2-0 up, it's got to be routine, and you've got to see that out for the final stages. What's interesting though is I'm in complete agreement with you. I think it was a penalty. It was like a bear hug. But prior to recording this morning, I had a look at the Blackpool Gazette. One of their reporters who was at the ground covering the game suggested it perhaps maybe wasn't a penalty, which again, maybe it's sort of local bias perhaps. But yeah, I think the issue at that point is when you go 2 goals up, you've got to remain in control of the game. And what we're seeing quite often over the past couple of games is this late bombardment of our goal, and it is becoming quite shaky and we are becoming quite anxious. And although we have managed it fairly well in recent weeks, yesterday it did seem that there was going to be a bit of an inevitability about it, because I think defensively we weren't very strong at all. You touched on Winchester making that really good last minute challenge to kind of save our bacon earlier on in the half, but there was also a passage of play where Callum Doyle had been dispossessed and we needed to obviously make another interception there. And I think there was a couple of times where the warning signs were there. We didn't heed that warning. And as the game grew on and they obviously took the chance to get a stake back into the game, I think that's where we really should have been, kind of edging further back upfield and maybe looking to kill it off then. But look, it's one of those things where we're frustrated, we've dropped points, it feels like a loss, but I think if we hold an inquest into this now and we do it to death, I just don't think it warrants it at this stage. We're going to have a couple of frustrating afternoons, no doubt, throughout the course of the season, and this really just typified it yesterday.
Yeah, certainly. Let's come to the main talking point, I guess. Everyone was just watching the clock tick down. It didn't look in particularly that much danger. There was a flare thrown onto the pitch, and that was dealt with by the stewards, and then kind of the ball's clipped into the box, and the referee blows his whistle. I honestly thought he was blowing his whistle for full time, where he pointed to the spot. And looking at it first time and on the replays that we had available to us immediately, it didn't look like there was much in it, but there's been some footage emerged overnight from the Fleetwood fans behind the goal that shows a little bit more contact from Bailey Wright on their forward than maybe we first saw, Martin. Do you think it was on reflection possibly a okay decision by the ref, or do you agree with Johnson that it is an absolute travesty?
I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I think it's one. I don't think it's an absolute travesty. I don't think it's anywhere near a clear-cut penalty. I think there's always going to be contact in the box, and I think if you give that as a pen, you're going to be given 5 or 6 penalties every game when balls come in the box. I think the referee had a very clear view towards Bailey Wright. And there wasn't any players obstructing his view, so he had a very clear view of it. I think he was probably quite keen. He seemed very eager to give it. He, maybe had some words from the Fleetwood players or Fleetwood bench about our penalty, and probably thought he had to give that one. But I think regardless of the referee's decision, whether we think it was right or wrong, the biggest problem is that Bailey Wright gave the referee a decision to make. There was absolutely no need for him to do it. That the forward wasn't getting anywhere near the ball, and Bailey Wright was to blame for, or had partial blame for the first goal, and he came way out and left a huge gap in behind him. And he's simply, a fellow of that experience should not be given the referee the opportunity to make that decision in the last minute of the game. And, you can argue all about the rights and wrongs of the ref's call, but should never, ever, ever have been an option for him to give it. And that's the biggest part of it.
Absolutely agree. And we've had a question on Twitter. We've had some Twitter questions this morning. Craig Rowley3333 has asked that specific thing. He said, I thought we had Wright in for experience. I thought he was poor yesterday and showed a little expensive when needed. Alves in the next game for me. Do you agree? Do you think that it's going to be a switch up? Well, is Flanagan only out for one game?
Yeah, he's only banned for one, so he's available for...
I believe so, yeah. Yeah, just the one.
But do you think it's going to have altered Johnson's calculation about who he sees as a replacement for Doyle or Flanagan if either of those get suspended or injured in the future, Greg?
Yeah, possibly. And I think because of the way that we are performing at the minute, there's a lot of people who are sat warm on the bench who perhaps thought they would have been in our starting 11. I think Bailey Wright probably thought he would have been in our starting 11 throughout the course of the season, but because Tom Flanagan's performed so well, when you get the opportunity, you really can't pass it up. Yesterday was a massive chance for him to make his stake, to say, like, really, I'm contending for that spot, because I think we've got to look at it and expect Callum Doyle will start alongside one of the two pretty much every single week, unless injury permits otherwise. But I think my biggest takeaway from yesterday is if you had Doyle make one of those decisions, if you had him concede that penalty, then you would have perhaps, blamed naivety or his inexperience. But Bailey Wright, like Martin said, he should not be doing that. And I agree with Johnson in the sense that, the referee seemed like he couldn't wait to give it. The game had dragged on an awful lot at that point, 97 minutes, when there was only 5 minutes added on. They're both facing the ball. Look, it's minimal contact, but it's a shirt pull. And I think if we got that penalty, we would have said it's a definite penalty. And the first angle I seen it, I thought no penalty. I watched it back on Quest again, I thought no penalty. But the lad who's recorded it from the Fleetwood end, the YouTube blogger lad, I think he's obviously provided the alternate view where it really does show that he's given him a tug, and the referee has obviously left with no choice but to reward it. But the telling sign for me is that nobody disputed it. There wasn't anybody going to surround the referee. Bailey Wright just stood there. He looked like he knew what he'd done. He'd accepted the decision, and there was nobody kind of getting in the referee's face to say, like, look, you've dropped a bollock here. And that's typically like what you would have seen from, say, somebody like Max Power do last season, surround the referee and kind of question why he's give it. But we just seem to roll over and accept it. And I think based on Bailey Wright's performance yesterday, I can't imagine he's going to get much game time unless it's a cup game.
Well, that said, I can't remember the last time protests from a defence changed the minds of a referee once he'd already given a decision.
Yeah, we don't get VAR at this level. It's not going to change anything. But that being said, if you're adamant perhaps as Lee Johnson was, that it was a disgraceful decision, then surely that you're gonna argue about it and say, why on earth have you awarded this decision? And like I said, it's not clear cut. It is soft, and you see that type of foul pretty much 100 times throughout the course of a game. But when the referee's got a clear view of that, and you're away from home holding on to a lead with seconds left, you just don't do it. You just stand strong. You keep your hands to yourself, and he's cost us the points ultimately yesterday.
Certainly, It was so disappointing, but I think we can't read too much into it. We've had a few comments saying, that we've had this come in and stuff like that. But to be fair, like an away draw, as long as we're winning our home games, still in the top two, still level on points at the top with that game in hand, we're still all right. And I think we need to remember that. But we should be looking for points of improvement as well. And one of the things that keeps coming up is substitutions. I just want to combine a couple of questions we've had on Twitter. Ander Grimm has asked, what do you make of Johnson's substitutions? Well, we've discussed a little bit. Pritchard for Embleton seemed the obvious one, but he went for Broadhead, leaving the wingers on who were clearly fading. And there's a question over Gooch. It's from Gareth Sanders. Why does Johnson persist with Gooch? He's been poor all season. I think that's a bit harsh on Gooch, who hasn't been poor, but he certainly hasn't been overly impressive in the last couple of games, and McGeady is, I think, a little bit wasteful. Martin, what do you think about the the wingers situation, the fact that we've got Djaku and Broadhead and Pritchard all champing at the bit to get on the pitch and make an impact, and all players with pedigree playing at a higher level. Do you think it might be time for a change in the league? Because we're going to have Wigan, but we've also got, league games coming up.
Yeah, and I think, this Tuesday's game against Wigan gives Johnson a really perfect opportunity to have a look at things. And, over the course of the season so far, like, a lot of people have criticised the defence and our inability to keep a clean sheet. And, that's obviously consequently left us hanging on for games where we perhaps should have put them to bed. And I think one of the reasons that we haven't been able to put them to bed is because that attacking three behind Ross Stewart hasn't been firing on all cylinders. I think if you look at every component of the team, Ross Stewart's done great so far this season up front. I think, Dan Neil in midfield's had a great season so far. I think Luke O'Nien yesterday had his best game in midfield for us. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. Defensively, as a unit, we've actually done pretty well. I think if you look at the goals that we've conceded, we've had a couple of errors. We've had a set-piece goal, and we've had a great goal against Burton, I think, scored against us. So it's not as if we've been leaking a load of chances and leaking goals, but we've often been left hanging on towards the end of the game. And I think that's because that front three behind Stewart hasn't been really clicking. Lyndon Gooch had a fantastic game on the opening day of the season, but he's sort of reverted almost to type in the games that have subsequently come. And I really like Gooch as a player. I really admire his wholehearted nature of his play, and I think he's always got the ability to score and to create something, but he hasn't really been clicking all season. I think Elliot Embleton has started the season really well, but I think in the last two games he's gone off the boil a little bit. I think he struggled to get into the game against Accrington, and he struggled to get into the game yesterday. And I think Aidan McGeady, I actually think he had probably his best game of the season yesterday, but he was really, really wasteful. And, there comes a point where you go, well, we do need to score more than one or two goals a game. Not necessarily because we need to, but because we can. And we should, with the amount of possession that we had yesterday, we should have scored 3, 4, 5 goals if we'd been sort of firing on all cylinders up front. And, in a funny sort of way, and this is probably my wishful thinking more than anything else, but you go, well, conceding that goal yesterday, does that sort of give Johnson a little bit more pause for thought than it would have done if we'd kept the 3 points and kept them out? And, in some respects, you remember the Peter Reid game at Elm Park where we got stuffed against Reading, and then all of a sudden he brought a few young players in, he cut a few of the older players out, and it prompted him to change something. And I'm kind of wondering now whether that, the Gooch and McGeady situation especially, that'll kind of give him the chance to go, let's try something different, because we're not completely clicking up front. And, the Wigan game gives them the perfect opportunity to play the likes of Djaku, to play the likes of Pritchard and Broadhead. And look, if they have a good game on Tuesday, they're going to be keeping the place for Saturday, surely, aren't they? So the Wigan game comes at the perfect time. But I think, like, those three positions, as I say, those are the ones in the team that are really up for grabs. Unfortunately, it's where we've got the greatest strength and depth.
Yeah, Craig, what's your view on that kind of the three behind Stewart and maybe some of the other lessons that Johnson will be looking to learn from yesterday?
Well, first of all, I was just having a nightmare flashback when Martin mentioned that Elm Park afternoon against Reading, because Christ, that was a bad one, wasn't it? But look, I think quite rightly yesterday is going to be one where that's probably going to be the biggest lesson we've learned all season, that we've been in such a strong position and we've chucked it away through our own stupidity, if you like, because we coped very well for the large part, even though they had some pretty good chances. Torben Hoffman was superb in goal yesterday, but touching on the front three, there has been a lot of wastes, and I don't particularly want to dig anybody out because I don't think it needs it. I think we've had a tremendous start to the season, but if you're really looking to kind of scrutinise on some of the opportunities that we've had, you would typically expect McGeady maybe to have buried a few more. I thought he had a great game yesterday, but I do think that he's perhaps not at his best yet. Maybe that's due to his cut short pre-season, but I think as we go on, I think we're going to be a side who improves as the season continues. And I think because of the depth, like I said earlier on, if you don't take your opportunity of you are, say, starting to not perform as much, then you are going to have a spell on the sidelines. Gooch is somebody who pretty much always comes in for an awful lot of criticism. I'm not sure if he's turning into like this season's George Honeyman or the Boo Boy or whatever, but I think he provides us with an awful lot. And if he played in a side in and around the top of the table, like a Wigan or a Portsmouth or somebody like that, we'd be saying he's the type of player who we should be looking at for our squad. I think he causes defenders a nightmare an awful lot of the time as he runs towards them. Perhaps his decision making could be fine-tuned, but I think with stuff like that, it really depends on the situation and where we're playing. Yesterday, it wasn't the best of games in respect of, like you said, just how scrappy it kind of got in the second half. But I think if we played that on our pitch at the Stadium Light, that's a type of game where we could have easily ran away with that 4 or 5-0. But these things are going to happen. But if we are, say, looking to chop and change bits and bobs, Broadhead wouldn't have been my change yesterday afternoon. I wouldn't have brought him on. I think Pritchard would have been involved. And again, obviously, Diaku, you don't know where he's at in terms of his fitness. Will he get minutes in the 23s or anything like that? You would expect him to be involved in the cup game. But what I would like from the game at Wigan is, although, truth be told, I'm not even remotely bothered about the result. I don't want our season to have, continuous Saturday, Tuesdays because of going forward in the cups. I'd like us to at least focus on the league. But I think whoever gets involved and performs well, then they should be knocking on the door for the Saturday. And one person who we haven't even touched on, by the way, is Aidan O'Brien, somebody who banged a hat-trick in against Blackpool, and he doesn't even make the bench. Perhaps a little unfair on him. But again, at this point, I think it's going to be up in the air. It's a bit of a lesson learned from yesterday. Now, I think we've got to just go back to basics and say, look, we can't repeat that. And we need to make sure we're going forward, whatever chances we get, we need to take, because we've been quite wasteful in the past few games, but you do get the feeling that somebody is going to get smashed at least 4 or 5 at some point soon.
I have to agree. And just to stick up for Lyndon Gooch a little bit, remember that it was his really fantastic shot on 73 minutes that led to the corner where we got the pen. I thought it was a really good save from Cairns to get down to his near post to keep that out. And, it's that kind of spontaneity, I guess, that you get with Gooch. But on the flip side, we know as well that you often get the best out of Lyndon Gooch when he's had a little bit of time sat on the bench and had a chance to recover some of his best form. But I was a bit surprised to hear Danny Collins yesterday saying that he'd been quiet, because I thought he'd actually worked really hard. And yeah, I just think there's a little 5-10% more that those three, actually, as much as Embleton, I think, has been really impressive this season, and his assist yesterday was obviously a beautiful ball in. I think those three could add a little bit more, and some of the finishing overall.
It's worth adding. Sorry for cutting you off there, but I think in terms of the start we've had, I mean, we've had a pretty difficult start of the season so far. We've played sides in and around the top of the table, and I think, look, Fleetwood are no mugs by any stretch of the imagination. And I know we can all, do the thing where we look at the names and go Fleetwood Town or Accrington, we should be hammering these. But there's a lot of people have, kind of maybe went above and beyond in yesterday's reaction. But I don't think the league table truly represents where Fleetwood will finish at the end of the season. I mean, you've only got to look at the result that they had last week, beating Rotherham away from home 4-2. They're not a bad side. And look, to be fair, that's no excuses when you're 2-0 up away from home with 10 to go. You need to see the game out. But with that in mind, it's not a defeat. We haven't come away with, a lot of concerns or a lot of question marks over any players in particular or anything like that. It's just basically been a lackluster 10 minutes or so that's cost us. And we've just basically got to put it behind us now, because Bolton at home next week, it's probably going to be another tough game, and we just need to make sure that we put this one to bed and respond appropriately, really, because after the Burton game, people were fairly chewed about that one as well. We had so many chances and we blew them in that game, but we've just got to react well now. We've got to go win the next 3-4 games, and I think people will take that. You'll happily win 4 and maybe lose 1 and then repeat that form over the course of the season, rather than, going and winning 1 and then drawing 3 and winning 2 and repeating, say, form from under Ross or Parkinson. We're doing pretty well, and we've got two home games coming up in the league now where hopefully we can put a bit of distance between us and the teams behind us. But it's worth remembering, I think, just at this point, we've had a good start. A lot of these lads are new to the club still, and it will take a little time, I think, for some of them to gel and really get into a decent run of form. But at this point, I don't think there's many, if any, concerns about what we've done.
I think it's in context. It's actually it's not a bad result, is it? Really. My dad always used to say, win your home games, draw your away games, you'll probably win the league. And an away draw at any level isn't a bad result. Before the game, if somebody had said, "Would you take a draw?" I said I wouldn't take it, with enthusiasm, but I wouldn't be that disappointed if we got a point. And I think it's it might turn out to be a decent point at the end of the day. I think it's just the manner in which we got the point is really frustrating. But it's it's a young, inexperienced side. It'll be a massive lesson that they learn. And overall, as you say, Craig, we've had in context of the whole season, we've had a bloody good start. And if anybody had offered us 5 wins and a draw out the first 7, I'd have snapped the hand off. I'm sure everybody else would as well. So you chalk it off to experience, and let's go into Tuesday with the confidence that we should deservedly have after a good start of the season.
Well, let's use some of the benefit of our combined probably 90 odd years of experience of watching Sunderland Football Club and build on some of the comments that Johnson made after the match in terms of the idea that we need 3 goals to win a game, which I think was probably more in frustration at the referee than any kind of analysis of what is actually required to win the league. But Craig, you were doing a little bit of digging based on that comment. You looked back at Peter Reid's first promotion winning season at Roker Park and you discovered something that was quite interesting.
95-96 promotion season, which, I mean, to be fair, was an incredible achievement. I think sometimes doesn't really get the justice it deserves, considering obviously we blew the league away a few years later again under Peter Reid. But I think having a look through obviously Johnson's comments where he's talking that you need to win 2 or 3 based on poor refereeing decisions. Interestingly, Aidan McGeady kind of dismissed that and said, look, you just need to win your games, whether it be 1-0, 2-0, whatever. But with the help of Rob Mason and his superb history book, Sunderland, the Absolute Record, detailing everything from our foundation in 1879, we actually only scored 59 times in the 95-96 season in 46 games. I mean, if you think back at some of the big wins as well, beating Millwall 6-0, Derby County 3-0, we beat Grimsby away 4-0, a couple of games where we scored 3 against Huddersfield and Watford as well. But what really got us over the line in the end was a considerable chunk of 1-0 wins. And if you look at it, we kept 26 clean sheets that season. And I don't necessarily want to, revert to we need to keep X amount of clean sheets, but I just don't think we really need to be looking at every single game to go like, look, if we don't score 3, we're not going to win here. Because I think that attitude, it's going to become a little bit nervy for the players, I guess, because if you 2-0 up wherever, if you're at home or if you're away, I don't want that anxiety creeping into them to go, shit, we need to score another one here, because that's what we've been told. I think you are right. I think it's probably his frustration creeping in that we've thrown it away. And I'm sure perhaps upon reflection he may disagree with his own comments there. But look, we won 1-0 the other week against Wimbledon. We'd take a 1-0 win against Bolton next week. But I'm just not as convinced that we need to win every game by 3s and 4s. It's nice when it happens, but we just need to make sure that we do the basics right. And for 99% of the season, we have done. Yesterday, like I said, maybe just a blip there. But we've proven in the past, if you are efficient, you can go up not needing as much as he claims.
I wonder if some of Johnson's comments after the game sort of were a reflection of what happened in the dressing room after the game. And I suspect his comments might have been a bit of a message to the forward players. Because as we've talked about, we do need to be a little bit more clinical and put chances away. And, potentially there's been some finger pointing in the dressing room after the game about the defenders in the last 10 minutes. And Johnson's just making the point that, it is a team game. And we do need to be putting the ball away a bit more. But I had a very cursory look at the league table for the past few seasons that we've been in League One. And, over the course of a season, the teams who go up tend to concede just under 1 goal a game on average. And we're even after yesterday, we're on 1 goal a game, aren't we? Conceded 1 a game. So it's not as if it's a massive problem. I just think it's just the way it's worked out. But like that season that we went up under Peter Reid that Craig's talking about, that side was built on defence, wasn't it? We had we didn't. I think it was did Craig Russell top score with 13 or something, which for a championship winning side isn't a ton of goals, is it? And obviously we had Shea Given, who, despite what he later went on to do, was absolutely superb for us in in that season. And, hopefully Hoffman can replicate, channel some of his inner Shea Given, produce some performances like Shea did that season, because he was absolutely superb.
Yeah, well, just to play a little bit devil's advocate, I was also looking, because I was writing the On This Day for Sunday this week, which was the 7-0 win at home against Oxford United in 1998, and looked at the form we had going into that game, and it was 5-0, 4-1, 2-0, 3-0, and then 7-0. So, you can win the league in various different ways, and if you're going to win with 105 points, I think, what was it, 96 goals that season we scored, and that game, that 7-0, that was without Quinton Phillips. That was Ditcho and Bridges up front. So there are many ways to win the league, and it's about points in the end, and hopefully it won't come down to any goal difference, and we'll be home and dry by late April. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
I think that season we probably had quite a nice mix of scoring a lot of goals and keeping a lot of clean sheets as well, didn't we? That was the perfect combination.
Yeah. Well, that was Thomas Sorensen, wasn't it? That was the big improvement that season, and Hoffman has given me Sorensen like feelings yesterday with some of those saves. That one where Evans cleared off the line as well straight after, I think, was absolutely out of the top drawer.
No,
and
good,
we can't forget that it could have been worse yesterday. A 2-2 draw is not the worst thing in the world that could have happened. So, like we've mentioned, we've got a busy week coming up. We've got Wigan away, then we've got Bolton at home. We've got Wigan away in the Cup. We've also got a busy week on ROKER Report. Plenty on the website already up there, reflecting on the game against Fleetwood. I'm sure we'll have some tactical pieces coming up as well. We've got our Lasses podcast live on Monday, and we're hoping to speak to somebody from Lewis on that, because it's a big game next Sunday at the Stadium of Light for Melray's side, who are still unbeaten in the Women's Championship. So that's going to be big, and that's also going to be live on the FA Play, so as many people as possible go watch that game. So thank you all for listening. It's been a really interesting conversation. Thanks a lot, Martin.
Cheers, Rich.
And thanks for joining us, Craig.
Pleasure, as always.
And thanks everyone for listening. Cheers.